Hi, my name is Jamie Black. I'm the owner of Black and Tan Taxidermy in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to prepare your mounts when you're going to be fishing or hunting. So the first step in any taxidermy piece is before you ever go hunting. Find your local taxidermist, find the one you want, and talk to that person about how they would like the animal, whatever animal it is, prepared. Because everybody has a different preference when it comes to skinning, storage, and handling of it before they get it. For example, I don't require full body mammals, and this includes foxes, wolves, things like that, to be skinned prior to getting here. In some cases, though, they may need to be skinned, and we can talk about that too. When it comes to something like deer or moose, most people end up field dressing them, so that includes gutting, skinning, and proper handling. And if possible, you can bring in the entire hide with your head, no dorsal incision, nothing like that, and we will take care of all the skinning here, and that's part of the price when you come here. With any species that you're hunting, if you're talking fall hunting, spring hunting, you generally have to consider the weather as soon as the animal is down. So if it's a 30-degree day and you've killed a moose, you really need to get that animal out of the bush as soon as possible and get it prepared, and probably get it into refrigeration immediately. If it's winter hunting for something like wolves, you do of course have a little bit more leeway, and it's a little bit different handling process, but I would say number one consideration, and the one that people don't think about, is the weather. Take care of your hide or your animal the way you would take care of the meat. So if it's a 30-degree day or even a 25 or 20-degree day and the sun is shining down on it, you have a certain period of time to deal with the meat from that animal before it starts to spoil, and the hide is no different. You have to take the same care and consideration of it, or there just won't be enough left for your taxidermist to deal with. So when it comes to cleaning your animals, hopefully you've already decided ideally what kind of mount you want, or when you saw that animal, you gave it some thought about what kind of mount you want. So let's say, for example, you've killed a bear and it has a nice big white patch. Well, if you want a rug made from that bear, you can use the regular rug skinning incisions, which is from chin to tail and down all four legs. But you want to take great care to make sure that incision is as straight and as close to the midline as possible, or you risk losing a lot of that white patch. And don't go to your taxidermist with something skinned for a rug and decide to have a full body mount, because it's a lot of work to do to sew it back up. When it comes to moose and deer, if you have something that you think you might want shoulder mounted, when you're cleaning the deer or the moose, try not to make your incision anywhere past the little curl of hair at the front of his chest. Don't cut the throat. There's no need for it. With modern ammunition and modern firearms, there's no need to bleed out the animal. Don't cut the throat. Your taxidermist they will tell stories about you forever. So in some cases, a follow-up shot is necessary. That's part of hunting. As taxidermists, we understand that. We may not always like it, but we do understand it. So the placement of your follow-up shot, ultimately that's in your hands as the hunter, and it's a combination of ethics and your morals. So we of course prefer no headshots on anything that's going to be mounted, whether it's a rug or a full body mount. If it's a small mammal, and wolves are actually considered to be small mammals because they're on the small game license, a shot through the rib cage, even if it's close up, that's usually something that we can cover up, whether it's a rug or a mount. For something like deer or moose, nobody wants to be sewing up great big holes in the middle of the forehead. So for any animal that you've taken, transporting the hide, if it's something that you're choosing to preserve in one way or another, is really important. As I mentioned, the weather is a critical factor. You not only have to get the meat cooled, you have to get the hide cooled as well. Don't leave it in the sun. Try not to drag it through the mud. Keep water and any blood and gut contents off it, because that can create real problems far more quickly than you would ever imagine. Generally speaking, you're going to fold the hide skin to skin and roll it up. And again, this depends on species, it depends on weather, and it depends on how quickly you're getting it to your taxidermist or a refrigeration facility. In the case of bears, whatever you're planning to do with the hide, if you're choosing to preserve the hide in any way, shape, or form, you have to get as much of the fat and all of the meat off it as possible. It's usually okay if you leave the paws and the head inside. Your taxidermist will skin those out, and it shouldn't be at an additional cost because we much prefer to do the skinning ourselves rather than having to repair cuts, for example, around the eyes or the nose, which are notoriously difficult to do. So the more fat and the more meat you can get off of it, the better. If it was a big, fat fall bear, if you've left 6 inches or 8 inches of fat on it, and then you roll it up and try to freeze it, it could take more than a week to freeze in a conventional, non-commercial freezer. And that's going to give you all kinds of problems. Don't salt your hide in the field unless you've already talked to your taxidermist about how to do it. So too many times, people will try and salt it in the field because they've heard that that works for preservation. And if it's done incorrectly, it only makes things worse. So if you are going to salt your hide, make sure that you learn how to do it properly first, and make sure that you use the correct salt and the correct amount of salt. You cannot leave a fall bear with all of his fat intact and use a half a pound of salt on it and expect anything good to happen. So when a taxidermist salts the hide, he's going to take it right down almost to the hair follicle, and he's going to use up to 50 pounds of salt per hide, and he's going to do it more than once. So you should never leave it with big pools of fluid standing in the hide, because the salt pulls out all the fluids that would cause spoilage. And so what we do is we rub the salt into the hide, we fold it up, leave it for up to 24 hours on a tilted board so that that fluid can run out. And then we go back and scrape off that salt, and we actually add another up to 50 pounds of fresh, dry salt and roll it up again. After that, most of the problem-causing bacteria and fluids have drained away, and it can be safely processed and handled after that. Have a sharp knife. Whenever I see a lot of skinning cuts, I know that the person's knife wasn't sharp, because if it's not sharp, you have to push hard to make it actually cut. And if your knife is sharp, you should be able to almost glide through the hide like butter. And if you start struggling with it, just stop for a second and sharpen. Or there are a number of different products available these days that you can have with you that have interchangeable blades, so you can always have a fresh sharp blade ready to go. Hi, my name is Jamie Black. I'm from Black & Tan Taxidermy in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And we're just going to go over some of the basics of caring for your trophy fish. Now, we don't have limits on our fish at Black & Tan, so if your child considers their first 10-inch walleye to be a trophy, that's fine. We're happy to mount that for them. Some of the basics of fish care include, number one, taking fresh pictures as soon as it gets out of the water. So when the fish dies, the color fades. When the fish is mounted and dried, the color really fades. So the better pictures I have, the better I can repaint it to the way it originally looked. So what I'd really like to see is a good picture of the head, and at least one, if not more than one, full body shot. It doesn't matter if you're in the background or if it's laying like on the boat measuring tape, or even if it's laying beside a cooler for scale. It doesn't matter, as long as I've got those clear, fresh pictures in good light. So the basics of handling: don't gut the fish. If you're not going to eat it, you do not have to gut it. Take care when dispatching. Try not to smash the head in. A lot of fish will have expired anyway, so that's rarely an issue here. When it comes to trout especially, we're probably going to be replacing the heads with a replica head, so don't worry about too much damage to the head. If there's a particular hook that you caught it on that maybe you want it mounted with, you can wrap that up too. Just let me know in advance so that I'm not poking it into my fingers when I unwrap your fish. So don't wrap your fish in newspaper, because the ink from the newspaper will actually run and could stain the skin of the fish. And that's something we can't really paint out. We could, but it doesn't look as nice with a heavy paint job. So with any species, what you want to do is squish the fins tight to the body. If you're ice fishing, you can even take a little piece of paper or cardboard or something, wrap it around the tail wet, and let it freeze, and that'll really go a long way towards protecting that tail. Take any piece of material you have, whether it's a towel or an old t-shirt, or you can steal your buddy's t-shirt, get it all nice and wet, wrap it around the fish, and you can let it freeze like that and then bag it. If a fish is wrapped properly, it'll last in your freezer for several weeks to several months before you can get it to your taxidermist. Please don't leave it all weekend in a cooler full of water and empty beer cans, and then bring it in on Monday stinking to high heaven thinking that you're going to get a really nice mount out of it, because you're not. When you're ice fishing, again, take care of the fins, make sure that they don't break. You can probably throw it right into the snowbank and let it expire, and it'll be just fine after that, but you still have to wrap it. Again, taking care of the fins. I know I've mentioned fins a lot of time because they're really important and they're very fragile. So take care of them. Maybe you don't want your fish mounted. Maybe you want a replica. They're gaining in popularity. They are a little bit expensive, but replicas are for a lifetime. They're never going to get greasy, never going to be bug issues, and they're available for almost any size or species of fish. And you can even get them done years down the road. So it could be a fish maybe you caught as a kid. So what we need for replicas is the basic length measurement. So that's nose to tail, with the tail squished down if you can. And hopefully a girth. So that's the widest part of the fish. Some species your taxidermist probably has enough experience with, like walleye and pike in particular, that they can just look at a picture and ballpark the girth for you. You can even make it a little bit bigger if you want to. So again, with the pictures, you want those nice clear pictures, fresh out of the water, and it doesn't take more than a second or two. Everybody's got an iPhone or a smartphone in their pocket. They can just take a couple of quick snaps. If there's any particular markings, scars that you want preserved, markings on the fins, maybe it was a really nice colorful breeding pike that had super colorful fins, anything that you think is going to stand out about your fish, take a picture of it. We never complain about having too many pictures, but having too few is definitely a problem.
Thanks for joining us. For more information, log on to www.venturenorthoutdoors.com. Remember, the next time you get a chance to head outdoors, venture north.